Test. Okay. All right, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michaela Rankin. I am the program assistant for the Building Safety Program, and today I am joined by Eric Rouse, one of our building inspectors, and James Bales, one of our lead building inspectors. And today we're here to talk about some of the typical residential inspections and the common corrections we see with those. A brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go over some information, helpful resources. I'm going to briefly touch on how to request an inspection, what to expect on the day of an inspection, how to locate your inspection results, and then we're going to jump into an overview of some of the typical inspections and the common corrections. And we'll wrap it up with contact information for our program. So I want to preface this presentation with, due to the nature of the topic, we're going to be using a lot of technical and building terms that may not be widely known to the general public. So we have a link here to the Washington State Building Code Council, where you'll find the residential and all of the building codes we've adopted in Washington State. And in Chapter 2 of the IRC, the International Residential Code, it's full of definitions. So if you're looking for some light reading or want to learn more about what we're talking about, check out the residential code there. We're going to touch on the residential plot plan, the importance of all the information on there. So we've included a link to the plot plan checklist and example. We also created a document that outlines the typical new home and remodel inspections. So we're looking for a great guide of kind of the general inspections that will be requested throughout the process of your project. Check out that document. And then I want to reference some of the past learning labs that our department has done, how to get a residential building permit, building inspections and how to schedule them, and then the Washington State Energy Code on residential submittal applications. And we've also included a link to the Learning Lab library there at the bottom. So I'm briefly going to touch on the options for requesting inspections, but we did do a learning lab last year that goes over a deep overview of that process. So if you'd like more guidance on that whole process, check out that learning lab. The three options we do have for requesting inspections are going to be online via permits.clark.wa.gov, over the phone through our automated inspection request line by calling 564-397-2477. And then we recently launched a text message option, so it's simply text the word schedule to 866-714-5489 and follow those prompts. You'll see throughout the presentation that with the inspection title, there's also an INS number next to it. That's the inspection code that you'll need to request the inspections over the phone or via text message. And we've included a link below to the IVR guide and the list of the building inspection codes there. And then want to emphasize the importance of if you're requesting an inspection for the next day, that request needs to be completed prior to 10 p.m. So if you're looking for an inspection tomorrow, make sure you get that request completed before 10. And then on the day of the inspection, you can expect a thorough inspection, verifying that all the work has been built according to the approved set of plans and that it meets the minimum code requirements. In order to perform a thorough inspection, the building inspector is going to need access to the approved plans and the permit card on site. They're going to need access to the property. So if there's a gate code or if the property's locked or you need to meet the inspector on site, those are great details to leave in the comment section when you schedule the inspection online or via text message. We're going to need all animals and livestock to be secured. And then most importantly, all of the work affiliated with the inspection needs to be completed prior to the inspection being requested. The inspector shows up on site and you're halfway through putting the rebar in for your foundation pour, the inspector is going to fail that inspection. You're going to need to call it back in when the work is completed. And then once the inspection's been performed, you can find the inspection results on the top right-hand corner of the permit card. There's a QR code. You can scan that, and it's going to bring you right to the page with a list of all the inspections and their status. Or you can visit inspections.clark.wa.gov, put the permit number in there, and it'll bring you to the same page. Moving on to the first inspection that's required for all residential projects. You're not able to schedule any other inspections until this one has been completed. This is the pre-construction erosion inspection. Really, the main goal of this inspection is to treat it as a pre-construction meeting with your inspector on site. It gives you an opportunity to discuss any of the special conditions or departmental holds that may be affiliated with your project. It's a great idea to get an idea of all those requirements at the beginning of your project so you don't get all the way to final inspection and realize you have a bunch of other stuff that needs to get taken care of. You can also get a list of all the required inspections for your specific project, and then also talk with the inspector about inspection readiness and what their expectations are going to be for the inspections and when to call them in at what point in the project. The inspector is also going to be verifying that the erosion control BMP's best management practices are in place at this time. And that's according to the approved erosion control and stormwater plans that are reviewed and issued at the time of plan review. Some of the common corrections we see with this inspection is that the BMPs are not in place according to the approved plans. Bathroom facility is not provided. The address isn't posted for the property. The approved plans aren't on site, or the construction entrance isn't clean or hasn't been installed properly. So I've got a couple examples here of some failed erosion control inspections. On the left-hand side, showing the importance of a clean construction entrance with rock. It was pretty muddy out, and a truck came to deliver some building materials, and they got stuck in the mud and got quite a mess there. So really, the construction entrance is super important on the project. On the top right-hand corner, we've got the erosion control plan requires there to be a designated concrete washout. That's not just in the middle of the lot next door. So that would be a reason that an inspection would fail. And then bottom right-hand corner, it's really important to have job site cleanliness throughout the process. You can see there's some material spilt on the floor there that could be seeping into the groundwater. So we really want to make sure that it's safe, clean, and hazard-free on the job site. Right, now I'm going to turn it over to Eric.
All right, thank you very much, Michaela. As she said, my name is Eric Rouse. I am one of the field inspectors. And I just want to say, you have your architects, you have your structural engineers, you have your site supervisors. As an inspector, we're just another component in your project. And we're all trying to work together to put together a good product for the homeowner or for whoever this project is for. So we're there. We want to be a team player. When we show up on site, our goal is to just pass the inspection and leave. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for watching this online later on, because the more that you know what we're looking for and the more that we communicate together, it's going to save you time and it's going to keep your project on schedule. So thank you very much for coming out today. So one word that you're going to hear us say a lot today is the word verify. That is mainly our job. We're going to look at the structural plans. We're going to look at the architectural plans. We're going to put whatever the plans examiner put on there. We're going to look at all the other documents that you had to turn in to Project Docs. We're going to look at those and just verify that the things that are on those pages is what actually ended up getting on site. So the first two inspections that we're going to do to come out and verify is a zoning setback and a footing / foundation inspection. Now we're going to start with a zoning inspection, and we're going to look at the plot plan, and each parcel is zoned differently within the county. So we're going to look at that. All that information that comes on that plot plan, a lot of that information is going to be pertinent throughout the whole course of your project. But for just now at the zoning inspection, we're going to look at those dimensions that are circled in red. And we're going to just verify that the structure that you are building is being put in the place that you say you're putting it in, and that it meets the minimum setbacks as per the zoning of your parcel. Now, the only way that we can do this is for you to identify the property lines. So there's a couple ways of doing it, and if these aren't done quite right, then these are what ends up being corrections. And those are, we need a string line put up at least on two sides, that are coming from the property line pins so that we can measure off of those strings to your building. The other option is if you want to get a surveyor, he can come out or she can come out and survey the site, but then they have to provide a report with their wet stamp on it. And in the bottom corner, it needs to say that their survey was done per the Clark County plot plan. So those are two main corrections that usually will come up at zoning is if we're not able to verify that what was done accordingly. Now, once we finish with the foundation or the zoning inspection, we're going to do the footing/foundation inspection. Because at this point, we can't do the zoning inspection until we actually know where the building is being placed. So now that the building footings and foundation are in place, we will go off of the foundation page on the structural documents and we'll check the rebar. We'll check the footing dimensions and sizes. If you're one of the builders that likes to do footings and foundation at the same time, we're going to check your vents, that you have the right amount that's in there. Now, there's a mathematical equation that I believe was put together by NASA that tells you exactly how many vents you need. But thanks to the plans examiners, they have gone ahead and put that on the plan. So we're going to go and just count those vents around the way. Another item that we're going to check for is the hold downs. There are hold downs that need to go on most structures. Now we're going to talk more about hold downs later on when we get to the shear walls, but a hold down is something else that we're going to check that needs to be in. Now this all might be in place. This all might be great. Your foundation guys did an amazing job. But unfortunately, if you don't have a geotech report, if it's required, we're going to have to fail the inspection. Now you might ask, well, what's a geotech report? Now a geotech is going to come out at the very beginning of the project when everything is still grass, still trees, and they're going to try to put together a report saying what the soils look like. Now, depending on how far down you have to dig to get to your foundation level, they might need to come out again and check. So what they'll say a lot of times on their report is, after excavation, but prior to pouring, they want to come back out and look again. They want to see if there's any organic material that's down there, a big old tree stump or something that needs to be removed, or some soil that nobody knew about 4 feet down that needs to be removed. So they're going to need to come out, do an inspection, write together a report, and that's going to be required to be done prior to pouring any concrete. Now, this is not a county requirement. This is a geotech requirement. So we are just following what the geotech says. We're just verifying that what the geotech wants has been taken care of. So once these are all taken care of and you've either have corrections or taken care of those corrections, you are ready to move on with your project. And now my friend James Bales is going to come up and talk about the next inspection.
All right, thank you, Eric. So I'm going to talk about post and beam, and for those of you that don't know, a post and beam is essentially what's going to support your floor in between the foundation walls. We're going to want to verify point loads and floor joist layout. Any plumbing pre-deck has been installed, and this is all the plumbing that will be below the floor. We want to verify with that the plumbing has been supported properly, there's clean outs installed if required, and that it has proper slope. We're going to be looking for positive connections to the posts and footings, the anchor bolt placement, and this is based on either prescriptive or engineering. So for example, if it's supposed to be placed at 4 feet and it was placed at 6, then that would require more anchor bolts being placed. And then we're going to review any prescriptive and engineering requirements. Some of the common corrections that we'll find would be an overnotched sill plate. And a sill plate's the plate that is a horizontal piece of wood that sits on top of the house's foundation. And that's acting as a bridge between the foundation and the rest of the structure. Is a critical element in which it helps distribute the weight and secure the building to the foundation. So if that plate's been notched more than 50%, then we'll need another anchor bolt within 12 inches. Incorrect anchor bolt placement is another common one. No pre-deck plumbing. Sometimes people don't realize that that's required before they deck, but we definitely want to verify that before the decking goes on. And then missing the I-joist layout. These are engineered designs. We want to make sure that we have that in case there's required blocking or any special engineered requirement. And then inadequate bearing of point loads and floor joists. And so the floor joists have to be supported typically with a hanger or in what's called a beam pocket, where the concrete installers will have a little pocket put into the stem walls of your foundation, and the floor joists will rest in there. Those require 3 inches of bearing, and sometimes the concrete will break or the floor joist might not be long enough, and they won't have the bearing on that. And we got a couple pictures here. The one to the left is an overnotched sill plate, and they will need another anchor bolt within 12 inches of that notch, and it also looks like they need some nail plate protection. And then the one to the right is an anchor bolt that's right above a foundation vent, and our code requires a minimum of 7 inches depth in the concrete, and it doesn't quite look like this one has it. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric.
All right, so we've passed our post and beam inspection. You put your floor decking down. You've built all your walls. You put your roof, your trusses on. You got your structural sheathing everywhere, and now you call me out for a shear wall inspection. And there's 3 main things that that are beneficial for a shear wall inspection. We want to keep the building from sliding off the foundation. We want to keep the building from racking, and we want to keep it from tipping. Now, some of the things that we talked about back at foundation, the hold downs, are going to come into play now. Some of the things that James talks about at the post and beam with the sill plate and the anchor bolts are now going to come into play as part of the shear wall inspection to keep us from tipping, racking, and sliding. So there's going to be a schedule that your engineer most likely is going to put on the plans, and he's going to call out different types of walls. There's going to be an A, a B, a C wall, or 1, 2, 3, depending on how they like to label them. And then in that schedule, it's going to tell us exactly what he or she wants for nailing, for attachments, for hold downs, or anything that they want on that wall. And so we're going to look at that schedule, and then we're going to go around the whole entire structure, and we're going to look at those things and make sure that the nailing is probably done properly. The hold downs are been put in properly. If the hold down somehow got missed, that's going to be one of the corrections we're going to write, that missing hold downs. Or if the hold down was missed and then put in on its own without us being there, that's going to be a correction too. Because if a hold down was missed, we like to go back to the engineer, have them write you a letter stating how they want to retrofit this, and then we will come out and we can verify that the retrofit system has been done correctly. A couple of the other things that we're going to look at this point is if there's some fire separation requirements. Now, there's something that will not be put on by your structural engineer, but might be put on by the plans examiner. And that's, again, going back to the plot plan like we talked about. We're going to look at some dimensions there. And depending on what dimensions you use, you might have some walls that we call FR4 or FR6 walls. And those are details that the plans examiners will put on your plan, and those will be things that we will have to then check when we get out there. It has nothing to do with what the engineer originally designed. It's just some changes that might need to take place. So sometimes those get missed, or what has to take place for those. Look at those details. If they don't make sense to you, please reach out to your inspector, have a conversation, talk, explain it, so that it doesn't hold you up if things need to change. At this point, we also want to look at everything that's on the outside of the structure. Any decks, any porches, any overframings that there might be for patios. We want to look at all that right now, because as soon as we pass your shear wall inspection, we're going to assume that you're going to wrap the building, side the building, finish the building, install the windows. You're going to do everything to the outside of the building. So sometimes a correction might be need to finish the deck, need to finish the porch roofing, need to install stairs on the deck. So those might be a few corrections that we will have as well. I'll give it back over to James now.
All right, thank you, Eric. So now we're going to go over some of the rough trades. Before we do a framing inspection, we want to make sure all rough trades are completed. And this is important just in case there's been any structural damage. We want to catch this early on. I'm only going to go over 2 of those rough trades, but there are a couple others that we're not mentioning. For example, rough gas or exhaust vents and ducts. But two of the main ones are rough heat, rough heat mechanical and rough plumbing. So with rough heat mechanical, we want to verify duct support and sizing, duct termination. It's very important that you don't have an, an exhaust duct terminating right next to air intake. We want to verify the condensate line has proper slope and terminates at a proper location. And then depending on where the mechanical unit is located, we want to make sure that there's access for maintenance or removal of the equipment. Some of the common corrections would be missing the Washington State Energy Code sheet. And to be perfectly honest, this is probably the main one that gets missed. And so we do want to verify that everything's being installed per the energy selections. The duct not being supported per the manufacturer's installation instructions or per code. And sometimes they might be in a tight location, so that duct might be coming out and be pinched, and it's not going to work effectively. And then missing protective shield plates at your AC line sets and your dryer exhausts. With rough plumbing, we want to verify a water test on your drain, waste, and vent, or DWV, and the water lines. We want to make sure that it's all supported per code or per the manufacturer's installation instructions. All nail plates are installed when required, and that all your water piping and DWV piping is installed to the right size. Some of the most common correction would be the drain, waste, and vents not on test, and a lot of times they use a balloon to stop the water, and that'll slip and the water will go out. But we want to make sure that there's no leaks, just so that once the sheetrock goes up, you're not going to end up with a mold or mildew issue. Missing nail plates, it's another one. We want to make sure that those are all in place in case somebody's going to come and either the sheetrockers are installing sheetrock, or you're going to install a picture. Last thing you're going to want to do is puncture a plumbing line. And overboard, overnotched studs and top plates. The top plates can be overnotched up to 50% or overboard. And then the bearing studs have requirements as well. The pipe not having the proper slope or back graded, which would just create issues down the road. And then piping not being properly supported. And we got a couple pictures here of overboard bearing studs. And you can see in both the left and the right pictures, the structural integrity of these has been greatly reduced. Let me hand it back to Eric.
By this point, I'm sure you're starting to hear the word verify a lot, and that's all we do. We just come out and verify. So now we're here to probably the biggest inspection that you have is the framing inspection. Now, don't worry. Most often, I would say this is one inspection that fails for one reason or another. There's a lot of things that we want to make sure. The building needs to be wrapped. It needs to be in the dry, because once we pass framing, you're going to start to put your finishes in there, and we don't want them to get wet, rained on. We don't want anything getting ruined. So the structure needs to be wrapped at this time. Sometimes that gets forgotten when it's in the middle of summer and it's 90 degrees out there. You don't think about the rain, but that we need the building wrapped. Another item that we are going to be checking at this time is that all past inspections have been taken care of. You don't want to get to framing and I say, hey, there was a correction back at foundation. Did that ever get resolved? That's not the time to bring anything up. This is at framing here. So any plumbing, mechanical, exhaust, stormwater, footing, anything from the very beginning, zoning that didn't get quite taken care of, we like to get that all caught up and taken care of at this point. Another couple things we're going to be looking at, and we're going to be looking at the roof construction at this time. We're going to be looking at the roof ventilation. And now that the roof is on, we're going to be tracing the load path all the way from the roof, all the way down through the walls, down through the foundation. all the way down to the ground and making sure that it's continuous all the way through. Stair construction is a big one. We could do a whole entire learning lab on stairs, but we're not. So if for any reason your builder, your framer, if you're yourself doing the stairs, do not quite understand all the requirements of stairs, stair landings, the rise and runs, all those dimensions, please reach out to your inspector ahead of time, talk to him about it, and get it all taken care of. Another thing we want to look for is emergency escape and rescue openings. Back when we did shear wall inspection, there would have been no windows in place. So now that the windows are in, we just want to verify that they are to the right width, heights, and the square footage is appropriate for you to be able to escape out of that house. Another thing we look at is going to be the smoke detector locations. Now you might say, hey, well, this is wiring, this is electrical, this is L&I. Why are you looking at these? Well, we look at fire life safety items. And so we check to make sure that the smoke detectors are in each bedroom, outside of each bedroom, on each floor, that there's at least a box that's going to be in the garage. So that's some other things we check at this point. Now, some simple corrections that get written up is not having your truss package. We can't verify the roof. We can't verify point loads, how those roof trusses are supposed to be mechanically attached. We don't know if there's a bunch of lateral bracing or other items if we do not have the on-site delivered trusses. Now, unfortunately, a lot of times the framer will just throw these in his truck and drive off. We'll never see them again. But you'll say, hey, I turned in a truss package at the very beginning to Project Docs. Well, as the project goes on, those trusses might have changed a little bit. It might have gone from a double girder or double truss to a triple, or something else might have changed. So we need those on-site trusses to look at. And so that's a simple correction, or that's a correction we write that could simply have been not taken care of had those been on site. Like I said, another thing is we just want to make sure all the past inspections have been taken care of, caught up. We check to make sure L&I has been out there. We check to make, if you have a sprinkler system, we want to make sure that the fire marshal has given you cover allows you to cover everything up as well moving forward. So framing is one of the big inspections that we have. It's the one to get everything caught up. Don't worry, don't fret if you don't fail this inspection the first time around. You'll get it the second time. So now we're back to James.
All right, thank you, Eric. So we've got a couple of framing pictures here. I'll go over. One of them, we have a plumbing pipe where the top flange of an I-joist has been completely removed. This is definitely a time when the engineer of record would have to be involved, or the floor joist manufacturer. And then on stair nosings, we have one that's 1 3/4, and maximum is 1 1/4. And then with insulation, by the time you've made it to this point, you've passed the meat and potatoes. You're on the home run. And this is really important to keep your house warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We want to verify that the wall cavities have all been filled per the energy selections on the Washington State Energy Code sheet, that all outlet boxes, the wires leaving those are sealed, and then also any penetrations that are leaving your building envelope in the top plates or bottom plates are sealed. We want to verify that insulation markers are in the attic and visible from the attic access. We check that all the gaps around the windows and doors are sealed, and we verify that any required air barriers are installed, for example, between the first and second floor and the floor cavity. Some of the common corrections on this would be gaps in windows and doors are not sealed, outlet boxes not sealed, and missing the air barrier or air barrier improperly installed. And so we got a couple of pictures here. The one on the left is they just kind of looks like they were trying to use all the material they had. You can see there's some gaps, and that's just areas for heat to escape. And the one on the right is really what we want to see. You can actually make it worse by adding too much insulation, because you create what's called thermal bridging, where it gives the heat or the cold a bridge to enter or exit your home.
For time's sake, we've kind of gone from installation to final inspection. There are a few inspections that will take place in between these two. This county does require a sheetrock nailing inspection. If you have a tiled showers, there might be shower pan inspections. Depending on where your house is located, you might have to have a road approach and a sidewalk inspection done. So there are other inspections in between installation and final, but yay, you're at final inspection. Here we go. Congratulations. This is a time that we're going to look at a few new things that may have been taken care of or done after the house was painted and textured and everything put in. And then there's a few other things that we're just going to verify again. We're going to come in and verify that final electrical has been taken care of. We're going to verify that maybe the fire marshal has signed off if you have fire sprinklers. Now, a lot of appliances are going to be being put in at this time that everything else is done. So in some cases, if you have a water heater in the garage, we're going to verify that you have put an impact protect bollard of some sort in front of the appliance. And we don't want you driving into your garage and hitting the gas instead of the brake and ruin your water heater or busting a gas line. So that's something we'll check at final. Handrails and guardrails at the stairs. Now, this is just like when we talked about stairs. There's a lot of dimensions and requirements that can go into handrails. So if your finished carpenter is not familiar with those, please reach out to us ahead of time. Ask us. We can tell you the dimensions or how we measure or what we look for. It's a lot easier to talk ahead of time than us coming in at final and making you move a handrail, and now you're trying to patch sheetrock and repaint it and get the painter back out there at the last minute. Window fall protection is something that might be put in at this point. Window fall protection is required when the window is less than 24 inches above the floor on the inside of the house and is more than 6 feet above the ground on the outside. Now, a lot of times these fall protection will come out with the windows from your manufacturer. Sometimes you can purchase them online. There are different types out there. Some work the way the code wants it and some do not. So another item. I know some of these have a lead time of a couple weeks if you have to order them online. So this is another item to just talk with your inspector about and say, hey, do I need them here? What's a good kind that I can get? What's one that's going to work? Is this one going to work or not? That'll save you some time. Now back to smoke alarms. Now at the framing inspection, we checked to see that you had those boxes in place. Now we're going to check to make sure that you put the smoke detectors where they needed to, the smoke carbon detectors, the heat detector have all been placed where they need to, and that they all are working. They're all interconnected. We're going to push the button and make sure they're all working at this point as well. So some items that corrections, like I said, we have quite a few corrections that we might have at handrails. So please reach out and talk about those if you're not familiar with them. Same with the smoke alarms. If they're not working, not interconnected, you did an addition and the smoke alarms in the addition aren't working with the smoke alarms in the house, that's something that will have to be checked as well. There's a bunch of reports that need to be done at final from different people. And so we need to have those all done. And those are corrections that we write. And the new code requires a radon test to be done. So we need that radon test report at final. For the energy code in mechanical systems, we need to have a blower door test done. So that takes some time to schedule someone to come out and do that blower door test. So if you have any confusion, issues on what we're going to look at final, what we're not, please reach out. There's some things we don't care about. I don't care if you painted. I don't care if you put some carpet in the rooms. There's certain things, I don't care if you put your interior doors in your closets in. So there are things we care about. There are things that we don't care about. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions about what we're actually going to be looking at.
All right, now to touch on the exterior of the home, we want to verify that the permanent address is posted and visible from the street. Verify all final lot grading and landscaping's been installed, that the stormwater system is complete, and that if you do have a lawn irrigation system, that you have an adequate backflow device. Some common corrections on this is that the address is not posted or code compliant. This is super important. If you are in an emergency and you're waiting for paramedic to arrive. If they can't find your home, they might drive right past it. Or if you're waiting for a pizza or a delivery, they might not find your house. Lot not graded per the stormwater plan. A lot of money and thought went into creating these, so we want to make sure that they are installed per design. And lot drainage not installed per the engineered stormwater plan. You don't want to move into your house and already have your neighbor upset that all your rainwater is flowing onto their property. And then if you do have a lawn irrigation system, missing the backflow report on that.
All right, so you've passed all of your final building inspections and you're ready to get your certificate of occupancy. Unfortunately, there can be at times some outstanding departmental or agency holds, not directly related to the building permit or the building plans, but items that do need to be completed prior to your certificate of occupancy. Like we mentioned before, really great to get a list of those at the beginning of the inspection so you can plan ahead and get those taken care of. So you're not waiting a week or two, possibly after you've gotten your final building before you can start moving into your new house. Some of the departmental holds could be from development engineering, from wetland habitat, fire marshal's office, or land use. It could also be from your utility purveyors regarding your septic system, your sewer, your water. And then sometimes there's other conditions on the permit that need to be completed. Completion of other related permits. If you're building a new house that's replacing an existing home on the property, oftentimes there's a requirement for that old home to be demolished. That demo permit needs to be completed prior to the certificate of occupancy issuance. There could also be driveway or road approach requirements that need to be completed. Sometimes there's sidewalk or landscaping requirements. Got to make sure you have your trees planted, things like that. This isn't a complete list, so again, make sure that you check the conditions section on your permit card, and you can also find that information in the LMS permitting system as well. And then wrapping things up here, the building safety program, we really strive to be a resource for the community navigating through the permitting, review, and inspection process of these permits. So please reach out to us via email or phone if you ever have any questions, comments, not sure about something, looking for some more guidance. We are always happy to help and prefer to do that instead of, like the guys mentioned, writing a correction and having to go back and fix things later. And also, if you check out our past learning lab about inspections and the process there, we go over how you can figure out who your inspector is and what their contact information is. All of our building inspectors are assigned a specific area in Clark County, and so chances are you'll probably have the same inspector throughout the entire inspection process. And with that, we're gonna wrap things up and open it up for questions. Any questions? Person in the back.
What do I do if I fail my zoning inspection because I've placed the building in a different location than the approved plot plan?
Who wants that?
So it depends. There's what we require minimum setbacks. And so as long as you've met the minimum required setbacks, your project can still continue to move on. We might make a note of that you need to send that back in. You need to get the numbers changed, okay? And so that it documents more of exactly what is on site. Now, if you have a 5-acre parcel and your house is smack dab in the center of it, and you're off by 10 feet, and it's not 1,000 feet, but it's 1,000 foot 10, that's something we're not gonna care about. If you're in a subdivision with a little 6,000 square foot lot, and you say, I'm 8 feet from the property line, but in reality, you ended up 15 feet away. That's something we want to get redocumented or put, so people don't know exactly what the dimensions are. Now, if you don't meet those setbacks, let's say your setbacks for your parcel and that zoning was 10 feet to the property line and you're only 4. Well, your project is not going to be able to move forward until you actually move the whole entire structure to meet those minimum setbacks. So it depends on if setbacks are met or not met, depending on if the project gets to continue forward or not, and if you actually have to send your plot plan back into project docs and then have the building department recalculate it.
Yes, I think this is on. So on your post beam and joist, you have your anchor bolt over your vent here. How do they rectify this? Do they take the anchor bolt out and put it in a different location, or do they just add another anchor bolt?
You would add another anchor bolt. It's not hurting having it there, but it doesn't. And without seeing it in person, I can't tell you 100% that doesn't have the 7 inches in bed. But there's no problem with keeping it there. But you would definitely want to. They might need to put a longer plate to extend farther past that foundation vent well. But all pretty easy fixes.
What should I do if I don't understand a correction?
Call your inspector. So our names and numbers and emails are at the bottom. And I strongly encourage anybody, if there's something that doesn't make sense, just reach out to us, because we want to be able to come out and pass it. And sometimes it's hard to take the information we're seeing and process it through our mind, put it on paper so that it'll process when somebody reads it. Person in the green.
What's the reasoning behind printing out your plans on site? Why couldn't they just be looked at online?
Connectivity would probably be the biggest one, but having them printed out and there for us to view, we can see everything. And when you're trying to look at something on the computer screen, especially depending on the size of the project, you're kind of sliding around trying to find, little details, and it's depending on the size of the project, it could be very overwhelming, potential to miss stuff.
If I fail my final inspection for something minor, can I still start moving in?
As long as there's no fire life safety issues, we typically don't have a problem with issuing a TCO. But if there's other parties involved, we would want to make sure, for example, fire sprinklers, that would be considered a fire life safety. So if fire marshal hasn't signed those off, even though the building department, you just got 3 or 4 minor corrections, one of those would be to obtain final fire. And so fire life safety always has to be taken care of before we can do a TCO.
Well, thank you so much for coming to learn about typical inspections and all the common corrections. Thanks. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you so much for attending today's session, and thank you to our presenters. Our next session will be on understanding naming conventions in our permitting systems, and will include a helpful overview of LMS and project docs. This is scheduled for the 3rd Thursday of next month on July 17th at 11 a.m., and we hope to see you there.